For the first time since Nixon took the dollar off of the gold standard, the US dollar index has plunged, suffering its worst start to the year since 1973, wiping out confidence in America's currency and signaling a shift that will reshape the global financial system. But this isn't some routine adjustment or a temporary dip in markets. This is the return of a question we haven't had to face in half a century. What is the dollar actually worth when the world stops believing in it? In 1971, President Nixon delinked the dollar from gold.
I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold.
By defaulting on the U.S.'s promise to convert dollars to gold, he effectively launched the modern-day Great Fiat Experiment, where the global reserve currency, the dollar, was backed only by faith and trust in Washington. But as you can imagine, at that time, the DXY, or the US dollar index, which measures how strong the dollar is compared to other top currencies, plummeted as the rest of the world was trying to figure out what was the dollar even worth if it wasn't backed by gold. Which, spoiler alert, as you know, it should have been worth nothing because the dollar has no intrinsic value, but the perceived value persisted. The dollar didn't vanish. Instead, the US government found other ways to prop it up. First, the US struck a deal with Saudi Arabia and eventually the UAE to make sure that every barrel of oil on Earth was priced in US dollars. That's where the Petrodollar agreement comes from, which forced nations to keep huge reserves of dollars on hand. In effect, oil became the new backing for the currency. And while many would say this saved the dollar, it did not stop the runaway inflation that we saw in the 1970s, which resulted in the Federal Reserve hiking rates to nearly 20%. But that meant that suddenly foreign investors could not resist dollars. They became that much more attractive. So capital came flooding back into the dollar. And at the same time, the United States demonstrated their military and manufacturing dominance. And suddenly, the dollar was here to stay, whether you liked it or not. But if we fast forward to today, there is no Nixon shock. There is no abrupt ending of the Bretton Woods Agreement. So why is it then that in the first 6 months of the year, the DXY has dropped over 10%? Again, marking the worst start of the year since 1973, a time that we just went over was riddled with uncertainty around the dollar. Tell me what you think in the comments below. I want to hear from you. Why is the DXY dropping so much? If you ask me, it's not one particular crisis or one bad policy. It is an avalanche. It is across the board, many different components all coming together to create the perfect storm. While it is true that as of today, oil still backs the dollar, how long it will continue to do so is in question. Global powers like the BRICS alliance are actively pursuing de-dollarization, or an effort to reduce reliance on the dollar globally through new trade, new payment rails, different alternatives to using a dollar-denominated system and technology. This comes at the same time that trillion-dollar deficits that are now looking like they're only going to grow, are flooding the system with more dollars, reducing the value of the existing dollars at home and abroad. As U.S. financial conditions worsen and geopolitical uncertainty rises, major foreign holders are dumping their U.S. treasuries instead of buying more, pulling demand out right from underneath the dollar. But even that's not all. Most recently, the Federal Reserve is coming out and hinting at rate cuts.
Is July just too soon to seriously even consider a rate cut?
It's going to depend on the data, and we are going meeting by meeting. I wouldn't take any meeting off the table or put it directly on the table.
Rate cuts, which might sound exciting to the average person who's trying to get a new home, but when you think about rate cuts, it makes the U.S. debt even less attractive to foreign investors abroad, right? Remember that 20% I was talking about that helped buoy the dollar at the end of the 1970s? We're not going to be seeing anything like that. And if rates are cut, we're actually going to see foreign demand likely decline even faster, which is why it's so interesting that as the dollar index has dropped, gold prices have surged up over 25% this year, primarily driven from central bank buying. But this isn't just a coincidence, it's a signal. See, in 1971, the last time the world seriously questioned what the dollar was worth, the U.S. had options. They engineered the Petrodollar agreement, they hiked rates, and there weren't alternatives being actively built. At the time, most nations were locked into the dollar by design and figured they would wait and see and hope for the best. But today, the situation is different. See, they gave it a shot. The great fiat experiment started domestically in 1933 and internationally in 1971. And the question was, how long can the great fiat experiment go on for? How long can trust in a fiat currency really survive? But there is an answer. You might be surprised to learn that the dollar is not the first currency to go through a currency life cycle. In fact, currency life cycles have been documented throughout history, and they typically follow the same pattern. It typically starts with something real and tangible like gold and silver, and then the currency is created and is backed by that underlying tangible asset. But eventually, governments can't help themselves. They overspend either for some kind of function in society or to fund a war, whatever it might be, but they spend and spend that they cannot afford. At which point, the currency becomes devalued and eventually is so devalued that it is delinked completely from the underlying asset, at which point citizens typically start to wake up because inflation takes hold, giving way to hyperinflation. And that's when the people realize, often too late, that they've been duped, that the currency itself was actually never worth anything. We're at the point right now where trust in the currency is broken. That is a dangerous place to be, because when we look at other currency life cycles throughout history, that is when things really start to move quickly, giving way again to that inflation, to rapid inflation, hyperinflation, where you could see prices doubling or tripling almost overnight. It might sound like something that you think would never happen here in the United States or never happen to the dollar, but that's how everyone else felt in all of their currency resets as well. And I know this isn't taught in school. I know this isn't talked about on the news. It's a lot of information, but that is exactly what we study here at ITM, our currency life cycles. Because if you can look at history and identify patterns, then it helps you understand where we are today and, more importantly, where we're going next, which is exactly why we have created a guide, if you'd like more information on this, that covers multiple currency resets throughout history. It is completely free. We made it free because we believe everyone should have this information. It is called our Built to Endure report. If you don't have your copy yet, you can get one by clicking the link in the description below, again, completely free, or scan the QR code on the screen, whatever is easier for you. So when we talk about this currency life cycle, and like I mentioned, at the end, right, at the end of the life cycle, that's when trust is completely broken, hyperinflation, the currency is so devalued, it's basically worth nothing more than the paper it's printed on. What happens at that point? Well, that is when you have to restore trust with something real, something tangible, such as gold. See, they're going to try and fool you with the paper promise or digital promise 2.0, some new creation that they made that supposedly has value. Do not be fooled. This is where people fall for their lies and their promises. But do you really want to trust the same people who have been lying to you for all of these years for their own gain at your expense? I don't think so. See, those who hold the underlying asset, those are the ones who have power. Why would you rather have an intermediary, let's say a currency that's backed by something else, when in reality that currency can be manipulated, it can be overprinted, it can be devalued, it can be weaponized against you? It makes no sense. This is a hard lesson that countries had to learn, right? Foreign nations. With the weaponization of the US dollar, there's a reason, again, the central banks are buying record amounts of gold and getting out of the paper promises. They want the real tangible wealth. Because not only is there no counterparty risk, but they know that they will be protected no matter what happens, whether it's the dollar or any other currency. Because in this particular currency life cycle, it is different. It's unique in the sense that the dollar is the global reserve currency. So as the dollar continues to lose value, it's a situation that's going to impact everyone globally. And that's why we talk about there being a new monetary system, one with gold at the center of it. It's exactly how we've seen this play out throughout history, time and time again. This time is no different. It does not happen all at once, right? It's slow at first and then sudden. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now. That's why it's so important to really understand what's going on out there today. That's why we focus so much on education, right? Because we know education is essential to really understanding not only that you should have gold and silver, but why. The why is so important. If you just see that the Dixie's down 10%, you might not realize what that means for the currency as a whole and therefore for the entire monetary system. Big changes are happening. Big changes are happening. And that's not me trying to scare you. That is me just laying out the facts. And again, hoping that everyone out there is making sure to take the time to do their own research, to educate, and of course, take action. Protect your wealth outside of the system. If you want to learn more, please download that guide. I think everyone should have a copy of it, the Built to Endure. It has so much good information in it. And if you already know that gold and silver are the answer, but you want a second opinion, I mean, ask yourself, are you 100% sure that right now you have the right strategy? Because if you can't answer that with certainty, get a second opinion from our team. Talk to our team. Let us help you the way we have helped so many others. We have expert analysts who I work with every single day. They are the best. And I'm not just saying that. I learn so much from them, and I know that they are passionate about helping others. So call us at the number below, or you can click the link down below and set up a time that works best for you. And in the meantime, I so appreciate you being here. I'm Taylor Kenny with ITM Trading, your trusted source for all things gold, silver, and lifelong wealth protection. Until next time.